The book of Jonah is really fun to read. For those who know the story, what is some things that you remember about it? What is it about Jonah that makes it a fun story? Anybody seen the VeggieTales version? It's much better. Okay. Well, since I don't have the license to play it, I'll tell you the story about Jonah, and you'll probably remember it from Sunday school. So Jonah was this Hebrew, and he has a dream, or God tells him that he needs to go preach to the big city of Nineveh. And I love how Nineveh is explained in the Bible, because it says it was so large, it took 3 days to walk from one end to the other. And of course I'm going, well, if it was so big, maybe you need to get like an Uber donkey cart, maybe turn it into one day or something like that. But Jonah was not happy about this assignment. So sometimes when we get a calling from God, maybe you feel your conscience telling you to do something. If we want to call that a calling from God, we can do that. But this is where it starts, and we're going to stop and go because they actually want me to read the entirety of the book, which is 4 chapters long, so I'm going to do the short version. God said, "Go at once to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." Setting the scene. Nineveh is wicked. And then verse 3 starts with our favorite word in the Bible, but. But Jonah sent out to flee to Tarshish from the presence of God. He was trying to hide. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish. So he paid his fare and went on board to go with them to Tarshish, away from the presence of God. They said it twice, it must be important. But, verse 4, God hurled a great wind upon the sea, and such a mighty storm came upon the sea that the ship threatened to break up. Oh, God was mad. And I like verse 5 because it says a lot about different faiths. Then the mariners were afraid, and each cried to his God. So everyone had their individual God on this ship. They threw the cargo that was in the ship into the sea to lighten it. But Jonah, meanwhile, had gone down into the hold of the ship and laid down and was fast asleep. I seem to remember another person in the New Testament going in a ship during the storm and falling asleep. And everybody around him was going crazy, and he woke up and he went, "What's the problem?" Does anybody remember that story? But verse 6 goes on. The captain came and said to Jonah, "What are you doing, sleeping? Get up and call on your God. Perhaps that God will spare us a thought so that we do not perish." But the sailors apparently didn't want to wait that long, so they were casting lots. That's also in the Jesus story. They cast lots, and what did they say? Oh, okay. That way we'll know who caused this. So it kind of is like soothsayer type of reading the cards, finding out who made the storm happen. And what do you know? The lots came up and they pointed right at Jonah. And so they said to him, "Tell us why this calamity has come upon us. What is your occupation?" That's a funny question. What do you do for a living? Something's wrong here. Oh, what is your occupation? Where do you come from? Where's your country? And what people are you? And Jonah just says, "I am Hebrew." That's very rare to actually have somebody in the Old Testament say, "I'm Hebrew." That's a very rare occurrence. We just always assume they are. He says, "I am Hebrew. I worship the God of heaven who made this sea and the dry land." Oops. Maybe that was too much information. And then they were even more afraid and said, "What is that you have done to cause this?" He said he was fleeing from his God because he didn't want to do what God said. So they said to him, "Well, what shall we do to you that the sea may be quiet?" He said to them, "Pick me up and throw me in." Nevertheless, the men rowed hard to bring the ship back to land, but they couldn't. They were refusing to throw Jonah in the water. And they said, "We need a sacrifice." So they did what Jonah told them to do, and they threw him in the water. So somebody tell me what happens next. Did he drown? No, he was swallowed. You know. He was swallowed by a large fish. Okay, it does say large fish, but we all just think, well, what fish is large enough to swallow a human? And for some reason, he stayed alive in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Oh, that number 3, right? And where does the fish spit Jonah out? The beach by Nineveh. Well, he got there anyway, didn't he? Okay, so what do we think about this story so far? You can't hide from God. That's usually the biggest takeaway. And also, take ownership of your mistakes. That's a big ask as well these days. Perhaps it might be, I don't know, tell the truth, especially when you're speaking to a very large group of people like the entire country. Speak the truth. Take ownership of your actions. And don't try to run away from your mistakes or run away from what you are responsible for. I remember a pastor said, because I said, I think I'm being called to be a pastor. And I did talk to a few pastors, because I think some of you know my story of the female pastor I went to first, who said, "Well, I don't think you're the right person for the job." And then I asked another one and said, "I'm going to tell you what my pastor told me. Run as fast as you can the other way and go as long as you can until God gives you no choice." Because that's what we're supposed to say to other pastors up and coming, because it's a really hard job. I'm kind of enjoying it these last 5 years for some odd reason. But sometimes some people come to me and say, "I really feel called by God." And I usually go, "Are you sure? Do you want to think about it for a couple years? Do you want to go out and do something else and see if the calling is still there?" And they'll either go, "Oh, that's a good idea," or, "No, I'm ready." And that's what I said to that pastor. I said, "No, I'm ready." So I signed up for school, finished my divinity degree, and here I am. It can be hard. It can be when you're called to do something specific in the world, or, "Oh, I know I really need to do something, but it's going to be very difficult, and I might fail." And I've done that. I've done what I thought was the right thing to do, and I have failed. And it's not fun. But I just keep going, and I take a lot of, I feel so blessed to be here with people who are willing to allow me to make mistakes and to encourage me, and it's a really good fit, and I'm happy I'm here. But sometimes those tasks just seem so big. I think about before I got here, when you went through that whole process of becoming open and affirming. Was that a big task? Were you scared? Were you thinking, what are the other churches going to think about this? It's kind of like when you're in school, right? If I dress like this, what are the other girls going to say? Something, we're always afraid of what other people think of us. And so there's always that word in the back of our head saying, don't do it. It's not going to be fun. You'll probably fail. But you're not failing. We're not failing. We're small, but we're not failing. We're providing a really wonderful program for this city. And Jonah didn't want to fail. He ran away as hard as he could, and guess what? God wouldn't let him get very far. So if you do go home today, look up Veggie Tales on YouTube and the story of Jonah. It's a wonderful story, and Jonah was called to go to Nineveh because they were evil, because they were slapping each other with fish. And when he got swallowed by the whale, a whole big Black Baptist chorus was inside the whale with him, singing songs and getting his call up and going. So we're back to Jonah. Jonah gets another message from God. Go to Nineveh, like I said, and preach to them. So here we come to Nineveh. Was an exceedingly large city, a 3 days walk across. And Jonah began to go into the city, going a day's walk, and he would cry out as he walked, and I imagine him ringing a bell when he does this. 40 days more, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. Walking around town. How do you think they felt about that? Now that's dumb. That guy's dumb. 40 days. You guys are all going to die. So he keeps doing this, and they keep doing this, and believe it or not, the people who heard him repented, and they believed his God. They proclaimed a fast. Everyone, rich and poor, put on sackcloth. That's how they mourn. They put on a cloth, a sack. And then the news reached the king of Nineveh. He rose from his throne, removed his robe, covered himself with sackcloth. When a king does this, it's huge. Puts on a sackcloth and sat in ashes. Kind of like Job. He mourned for his city because he knew that they were going against God. Then he made a big proclamation by the decree of the king and his nobles. No human being or animal, no herd or flock shall taste anything they shall not feed, nor shall they drink water. We're going to fast, we're going to pray, we're going to repent, and God will deliver us from this coming calamity. What did Jonah want to happen? Jonah wanted them to be punished, because that's why he was here. He ran away, didn't want to do it. Now he did his job, and by gum, he better get his satisfaction that God delivers what God promised. What actually happened? God listened and accepted the repentance and said, I am not going to destroy the city. Now, number 3, then what did Jonah do? He was so mad at God that God didn't fulfill on what Jonah wanted. He went out of the city, sat down under a tree, and pouted. Do we ever pout when God doesn't give us what we want? Maybe, though, if we think maybe what we need. Do we pout? Yes, I do. I'm just going to come out and say it. I pout. And I pout when other people don't give me what I want. And my husband tells me that I'm the worst grudge holder in the world. I'm going to come clean about that. I deny it. There's some times where I'm a nice person. My daughters called me a Karen Friday night because I got mad at the hotel lobby when I paid for their room. They wouldn't validate my ticket. but I paid for their room. And I said, I paid for my room. And they go, but you're not staying here. That's not their car. And I started to get mad, and my daughter just pushes me away from the counter going, it's okay. And I thought, why didn't I lie? Because I can't lie. There are so many taking points in this story. Listen to God and trust God to make the right decision for you as to what the outcome is going to be. It might not be what you want, it rarely is. But trust God to make what will happen, happen. And right now I think we need a lot of that. We need trust that God will take care of things in God's way. And when it does happen, don't get mad about it. What is it? Be the willow. Bend with society. Stand firm to our values and our morals, but let it flow through us. And 4 years will be up in no time at all. I don't know why I said 4, just this abstract number. But one thing that I have taken away from watching the news, and this is how I'm going to close it, I really, really appreciate what Bernie Sanders said, if you didn't hear what he said about this. He won, so he's still there. He said this was going to happen anyway, because both parties have messed up. And so we need to just continue to be diligent and do the right thing as we move along, and be peaceful about it. That will really show the world what we're made of when we are peaceful. All right. Woo, that was a big story.